Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. You are welcome into this very special space. We are delighted that you've taken time to join us today. We begin with a full recognition that the last couple of weeks ago that it was proclaimed to be World Food Day. And we know this is not World Food Day, but we do know that we're in the season in which we remember World Food Day. And that's partly why we have this time together. So for those of you who have already remembered that or done something special, we thank you for what you've done to recognize the season that we are in. We are delighted that in these days, in fact, over the past months, Bread for the World with Creation Justice Ministries and the Rural Coalition and many others, Black farmer organizations, have come together to rename the space and the time in which Black farmers have and are and will continue to lead us in the agricultural space. Unfortunately, there have been historic inequities and challenges that have accompanied that journey of self-empowerment and of leadership, not only for the communities in which Black farmers live and serve, but even for our nation and our world. This is a moment to pause, to acknowledge these great contributions, and to speak into the challenges and the opportunities for Black farmers to lead and to be all of what it is they would like to be and we would want them to be for the future. So over the past few months, we've had time to spend with Black farmers listening to them. There is a statement that we'll say more about momentarily. But right now, in this moment, we just want to acknowledge that we do have those from the network who will be speaking to us today. We're delighted to have a wonderful panel of experts, those who are working in this area, either with their hands and their mind, body, and spirit, or who are leading in terms of analysis and perspectives that help us better understand what the contributions have been, are, and could be. This is an opportunity to address the Pan-African perspective. That is to say, not only Black farmers in the United States, but globally. We will be beginning in just a moment with our first speaker, who is our international policy analyst, Ms. Abiola, who will come and she will be speaking to the Pan-African global perspective around Black farming. Let me just say that the first major consultation that we had with the Black Farmers Network was relative to the United Nations Food Systems Summit. That was a historic summit with the United Nations in October of last year. Black farmers were accepted as a contributor to the dialogue of that summit. That began our journey. So we began with a domestic perspective in the global space with Black farmers. We had about 60 different Black farmers that participated in the discussion and led to that statement. We'll put the link in the chat momentarily. That led us to another consultation with young people, young adults who are entering into this very important work. And then we had a third one that was multi-generational that followed on. So there have been 3 official consultations, and all of this in light of Bread's priority to advocate for the reauthorization of the Farm Bill and also the reauthorization of the Global Food Security Act. These are 2 primary legislative opportunities to which Black farmers have been invited to feed into the space. So without further ado, it is my joy to bring on to you to give us a broader perspective of these issues with Ms. Abiola, who, by the way, is in Rome right now with the World Food Program. And we're delighted that she's phoned in. You won't see her picture, but if you look at the flyer, you will see her lovely face there. But she's taken time to phone in from Rome to give us her perspective. She and I were just in East Africa for the climate justice convocation in Kenya. And she went from there, and then our president, and she went on to the World Food Program, but she's still there. I just got back yesterday myself, but she is still overseas in this moment, but she's a part of this discussion. So without further ado, it is my joy to bring on to you my colleague and your friend, Ms. Abiola. So please, Abiola, help us.
Thank you so much, Angelique. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Rome, Italy. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Isn't it wonderful? Technology is so great, isn't it? Go ahead.
Awesome. And my apologies that you cannot see me, but I am with you in spirit, soul, and body. I bring greetings from Rome, Italy, where Eugene and I were convening with other NGO groups around food security globally. But one of the key things that we honed in on while we were out there was the importance of representation. Representation of people of color, representation of women in the ag sector, and just the importance of giving people a seat at the table, not just from a policy perspective, but from a practice perspective. So we had a discussion around from policy to practice. So as Angelique mentioned, part of my role at Bread for the World is to monitor policy that impacts food security globally, but essentially a big part is also working with my colleagues in the domestic shop on how we are interfacing and identifying the commonalities when it comes to food insecurity. Our policy platforms are focused on nutrition, equity, and the environment. And within the nutrition bucket, we really work to focus on issues around school meals in the US, making sure that kids have access to lunches, as well as food feeding in the informal and formal settings in the global space where Bread for the World supports policy imperatives. And then on the issue of equity, it's a really big bucket, but within that, we look at the issues impacting Black farmers and the role that they play. And when I say Black farmers, I use that phrase very broadly because, as Angelique mentioned, we were in Kenya last week and we got to witness the work of Black farmers on the continent of Africa and the role that they're playing in the issue around ending hunger and providing food assistance to their family as well as to the larger community, which is a big thing that the Black farmers in the United States are doing as well when it comes to food security. But we also know that there are issues around discrimination and inequities and lack of access to sustainable financing, issues around climate change and how that is impacting Black farmers' ability to produce crops, gain access to markets, and really scale up their production and their livelihoods in a way that is transformative and multi-generational, if you will. As Angelique pointed out, this convening is multi-generational in a lot of ways, multi-sectoral, multi-perspective driven. So that's kind of just the background. And part of the way that we address some of the policy issues impacting Black farmers in the US as well as globally is through, as Angelique mentioned, the US Farm Bill, as well as the Global Food Security Act. And in sum and substance, some of the things that we focus on with regards to the Farm Bill when it comes to the domestic provisions of the Farm Bill are the perennial issues that Black farmers have had to grapple with over the course of just the existence and the presence of people of African descent here in the United States, and the complicated history, if you will, that exists between land ownership and property, wealth building and freedom and all that, because some of the issues one of which I've written about is through agriculture, the U.S. has been able to establish itself as a power in the world, but it unfortunately was done on the backs of Black people who were not compensated for their work in the agricultural sector. So in a lot of ways, the issue of not just empowerment for reparation is really imperative as we have conversations around the U.S. Farm Bill, the domestic provisions, and how it can really lift up Black farmers, not just to be players in food security in their communities, but also players in food systems globally in the U.S. and across the globe. With regards to the Global Food Security Act, ways in which we see areas of potential collaboration has to do with research, where we have local researchers from historically Black colleges and universities doing work in partnership with their colleagues in universities in different parts of the world, specifically on the continent of Africa. So there's just a lot of opportunities for brilliance and co-collaboration and co-convening around the space of research alone, just looking at it from that perspective when it comes to the Global Food Security Act. Within that framework, there's also opportunities to really lift up women farmers, whether women poultry farmers or women agricultural workers. As Angelique pointed out, we were in Kenya last week and we got to witness a woman poultry owner in an urban setting who was using her talents to really empower not just herself, but other women in an urban setting. So I'll give you an example. Her ability to raise a couple of chickens enabled her to pay for her children's school fees. In the rural setting, we see a very powerful women farm owner who has avocados, fruits, sugarcane. She has her own chickens, she has goats. She's running a whole full operation where she's not just feeding her family, but she's scaling up her agricultural produce, whether it's the crops or the poultry, and selling it in the market. And when we asked her what her vision was, she said she would love to get more land so that she can cultivate more food. She would love to get more money so she can buy a truck so that she can transport her goods to the market and sell it, and continue to build herself economically, as well as create more opportunities for people in her community. So these are just some of the issues that, from my viewpoint, are cost-cutting when it comes to issues that Black farmers face. So it's not just for them to gain access to land, access to crops, access to science, but really how do we use agriculture as a transformative tool for Black farmers and farmers of color. So with that, I'm just going to pause and pass it on to Angelique. And thank you again for indulging me, and pardon the noise in the background.
Well, let me just say we are certainly enriched by your comments and your overview. That gives us kind of that overview of how we're approaching the conversation around Black farmers, no matter where they may be, both in the domestic space and in the global space. So thank you for indulging us even from being overseas with a phone call. Technology is wonderful. Well, we would like to move now to our next speaker. The next two speakers are two major congressional leaders with the Congressional Black Caucus, but who represent all of us in the U.S. Congress on the House side. We especially want to thank Florence French Fagan, who is, I think, on here. I don't know if she wants to wave, but she works in our Southeast work, regional work here at Bread for the World. And she was able to work with us to ensure that we had the voice of Congressman David Scott. And he is the chairman of the Agriculture Committee. And we are honored by her work and by the presentation he will bring to you. I will just say quickly that this will be a time of presentation that will take a little bit of time. So just work with us so that we can hear all of what the congressman has to say. Thank you so much. And thanks so much to Ms. Florence for helping us.
Hello, how are you? This is Congressman David Scott, chairman of our House Agriculture Committee. And first, I want to thank you for inviting me to give a few remarks today. As a man of great faith myself, I have tremendous respect and admiration for the work Bread for the World is doing. It is magnificent work, and I'm proud to be associated with you because your reputation speaks loudly for the great work that you're doing. I wanted to actually illustrate how we're putting your faith into great work in pursuit of ending hunger, and we can do it. And as the first African-American chairman of this outstanding House Agriculture Committee, I am very interested in the discussions Bread for the World is having. Also, your Creation Justice Ministries doing a fantastic job. And the Rural Coalition have had tremendous success with our Black farmers in our great country. And I was pleased to have worked with the Rural Coalition on outreach and equity issues that we've had in several farm bills. And again, on the funding and the authorities in what became our Inflation Reduction Act. It's doing a good job, ladies and gentlemen, and addressing the single most important issue we're facing. And we're doing a great job with that. The general themes identified in your working paper resonated with me and with the things I have heard from witnesses at our committee hearings and from our farmers all across the country. And during my time as chairman, I have been a champion for equity in agriculture. My very first hearing was in March of 2021, and it was a hearing to review the state of Black farmers in the United States. And I noted at that hearing some of the decades of discrimination against Black farmers by the United States Department of Agriculture. We've got to recognize it. We've got to tell the truth on this issue in order to solve it. Truth must prevail. We can't hide it. We've had the racial challenges, the Civil War, but they were an instrumental part of our great nation's history that we have learned from and that we are working together to address. And at that hearing, I was able to see the hearing as a way to publicly acknowledge and address the deep mistrust that many of our Black farmers feel towards the United States Department of Agriculture. And I also wanted to make it clear that agriculture cannot and will not ignore or leave behind individuals who want to contribute to our increasingly very competitive agriculture economy. We're number one in the world. We have the world's greatest economic system and financial system. I'm privileged to be chairman of our Agriculture Committee. At the same time, I'm also a senior member on financial services, and I feel the greatness of those two issues working together to help us to address these tight issues that we have in agriculture, making sure that it's here for everyone, regardless of race, creed, or color, and making great contributions, and at the same time making sure it's profitable and that we're able to keep going as we are going. And I wanted to make it clear that agriculture is, without question, our number one industry. I say that all the time, but folks, you can do without a lot of things, but you cannot do without food, without water, without shelter, without clothing. These are the basic items of necessity. And while some of the legislative aspirations that we had hoped to accomplish during this Congress was held up by some legal battles, I am very encouraged by provisions that we have made in our recent Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which I led on the floor and was very privileged to get passed. But we had a lot of help doing that. I certainly want to thank my Republican ranking member, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, who's worked with me on this left and right. And I want to send a special thank you to my good friend, Steny Hoyer, who gave one of the greatest closing remarks on a bill that I have heard, period. And I told Steny so. And I also want to thank my good friend, Jim McGovern, who is our chairman of our rules and my longtime partner in dealing with hunger and food. We're all working this together, and we're coming up with great work in this upcoming Farm Bill and the activities we have to do to get ready for the next big appropriations bill. And among the figures that we have gotten through our agriculture credit, our agriculture research, and inclusion efforts, we are providing $6 million in investments to support these critical areas that certainly have an impact on our great diversity. And among this figure includes critical aid for underserved farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners, and support of our 1890s and 94 land grant colleges and universities student support program. And I might add that it's been so successful. And I'm very appreciative of our committee having passed the bill that now will continue this 1890s scholarship program, but add $100 million to this program. And most importantly, make this 1890s land grant colleges and universities student scholarship program permanent, so that for generations to come, we will have students with opportunities at these fine institutions. Black farmers, white farmers, women farmers, Hispanic. The beauty about the land grant schools are these 1890s Black land grant schools. They have students coming from every race and background, and they will have a chance on their own merit to earn a scholarship with their high grades and maintain it. And that's what makes this program so great, and why we will definitely continue it, add $100 million and make it permanent. I'm so grateful for that. And we want to also make sure that we help our small families, farmland ranchers. Folks, I had a hearing on that, one of the most well-watched hearings. It was a dramatic hearing. We are losing right now, at last count, 17,000 small rancher farms in our country every single year. And on top of that, we're losing the other side of the cattle industry, our dairy. We're losing a dairy farm every single day. And I am determined to make sure we stop it. We're already putting in to the margins program to help our dairy people. We got language, you're already there, getting additional funding to help stem the tide of losing a dairy farm every day. We can't go along. Lord knows 17,000 small ranchers and farmers every year. And over the last 8 years, so many of our farmers have not even made a profit. And so this is why I feel the good Lord got me here, not just because I was Black or the first Black chairman, but because I'm grounded in finance. I got my MBA from the greatest school of finance in the world, the Wharton School of Finance. Served several years as a member of their executive board of directors. And then getting my other training at Florida Agriculture and Mechanical School, FAMU. So the Lord is preparing you for a lot of things, and I'm here in this position because of all the wonderful people that the good Lord has sent to help me with these issues, stopping these loss of farms, keeping our family farms secure, making sure we can get and make sure we can do the proper thing with getting this carbon back into our earth. The whole effort of regeneration is critical. Remember, it is Mother Earth. We don't call it Mother Earth for anything. It is the mother. The good Lord scooped you and me up from there. It is the soil that is the beginning of our food supply chain. And we've got to take care of that soil. We've got to hurry up and catch up with all of this fertilizer that Russia now, by the latest statistics, has produced 66%, 2/3 of all the world's fertilizer. And when they put Russia with Ukraine, where all this trouble is going on, this war, they control up to 30% of all the wheat and the corn, and this domination of fertilizer. Now we put some information in the inflation bill to start moving us to start developing our own fertilizing system. And we got money that we're going to add into the farm bill for that. And as we turn our eyes to the next Congress, the farm bill is, of course, right topical in mind. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, as we mentioned, I was proud to establish the scholarship program for our 1890 land grant universities. And we were able to, and this is, and I am so grateful that it is bipartisan. This is a biracial bill. It is one of those sterling examples of what the American people are asking for. Republicans and Democrats, all of us coming together. There are issues there that can only be solved if Democrats and Republicans work together. And so we've got to lead the way. And thank God for the opportunity of doing so. And additionally, I'm looking forward to reviewing the recommendations from the USDA's Equity Commission, and I will pursue opportunities to incorporate some of their recommendations in the Farm Bill wherever I can. And folks, let me just leave you with this as I may. And this is from that glorious song in the night that God has given you and me. Them that's got shall get, and them that's not shall lose, because the Bible says, and it still is news, your mama may have and your papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. And God bless our wonderful world of agriculture. And we thank God for all of you who are working together to make this Farm Bill the absolute best. God bless you and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Congressman Scott. And thank you, Congressman Scott, again for how much time you spent on sharing with us, not only from the page or from the legislative seat, but seemingly from your heart, is what we gathered, I think, from your comments, and to remind us that things do begin with the soil. And what have we done to the creation? We're pleased that Ms. Bigelow will speak more about the environment and climate and related issues therein later in our time together. So again, thank you, Congressman Scott from the 13th District of Georgia. We certainly appreciate your speaking into the history relative to Black farming as well. And certainly Georgia is a key example of where it is Black farmers have found their home. Thank you, Congressman, for gifting us on this day. Now we want to turn our attention to another congressional leader, also out of the Congressional Black Caucus and also representing all of us at the federal levels. We want to welcome Congressman Troy Carter. Congressman Troy Carter is the congressional representative from the 2nd District of Louisiana. So yes, we're going south again. And we thank our dear colleague, Chonya Johnson, who's been working with us at Bread for the World, now moved on to working with the congressman and also going back. She came to us from the CBC and now she's gone back to work there as well. So thanks to her and her team for our partnership in this regard. So without further ado, it is my joy to welcome Congressman Troy Carter with his presentation. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Congressman Troy Carter, proudly representing Southeast Louisiana in Congress. No matter your background, your race, culture, or class, we can all agree that we must come together to fight hunger and ensure everyone in every corner of the world has enough healthy food to eat. Our planet is bountiful and powerful. And because our planet can provide enough fuel for every human, we must use every effort to ensure that we do just that. We need to come together to ensure that nutritious food reaches every continent, every community, and every family. This year, the systems we use to distribute food to communities in need around the world has more challenges than ever before. Conflicts, war, and leadership changes are threatening shortages or delivery challenges everywhere. In this context, it's more important than ever that we step up to meet the moment. In Congress, I'm committed to fighting for international food aid that will directly translate into nutrition for people all around the world. The greatest country in the world, we must not turn away from suffering and starvation just because it's in a different region or continent. We're bigger and we're better than that. We must act and fund food assistance both here and abroad. Additionally, I will continue to support America's food producers, especially small farmers, so that we are stepping up to meet the need and demand for products domestically and internationally. This also means making sure that farmers from all backgrounds have the financial support and programmatic assistance to succeed to bring their products to market. For far too long, Black farmers in America have been pushed aside and face discrimination as they work to grow their food. This is absolutely unacceptable. We need to support Black farmers in their efforts to feed our nation and to ultimately help contribute to global markets and feed the world. We're all connected. We're all citizens of the world. Though I serve in the United States Congress, I'm fighting for a better future, not only for my constituents, but for the constituency of the world. I'm grateful to the dedication of organizations like Bread for the World as they strive to fight hunger on the front lines. You are truly saving lives and a living testament of what true service looks and feels like. I'm so grateful to you. I thank you. I'm proud to stand with you in the fight to end global hunger and to feed the world. Let's band together and stamp out hunger. God bless.
And thank you too, Congressman Carter, for those remarks and those words of encouragement, but yet also speaking to the challenges that Black farmers have had historically. Thank you for what you're doing to bring us together again across bipartisan lines to end hunger in our lifetime. It is now my joy to bring to you another colleague who's been a part of our conversations in the Black Farmers Network. and that is the Reverend Dr. Heber Brown. Reverend Dr. Heber Brown has written articles with us, has been featured, has been a part of our Black Church Pan-African faith engagement, but he had the vision years ago to bring together the great legacy of historic Black churches and Black churches, period, to say, let's reclaim the heritage. Some may or may not know that many of the historic Black churches or Black churches in the South, those lands often were donated by Black farmers who were able to have some land after the Emancipation Proclamation and then into the Reconstruction era, so that they would have those places for worship. But it came out of their heritage of being on the land. Yes, during the enslavement period, but the post-enslavement period. So there is a historic legacy between Black church and also Black farming. Many of those farmers, of course, are founders of those churches. And so it is with great joy. I also come out of that heritage, I may say, if you will allow me, out of Alabama. So I know it very well. So we want to welcome Reverend Dr. Heber Brown, who is of this generation with the vision of reclaiming that great legacy, not only for the past, but for the future. Hear ye now from Reverend Dr. Heber Brown.
Hi, my name is Reverend Dr. Heber Brown III. I'm the founding executive director of the Black Church Food Security Network. For the better part of 100 years, Black farmers have been cheated, robbed, killed, their lands have been stolen, and they've been discriminated against. But we have an opportunity now to combine our efforts around advocacy and grassroots organizing to write a better chapter for the future of Black farmers in this country. That's what I see with the Bread for the World statement and their actions with respect to Black farmers. They're combining with the efforts of so many others to start writing a new chapter. But we can't write a new chapter until we name the old demons. Racism, the demons of economic injustice that have presented barriers and blockages to Black farmers for far too long. Let's do better. This statement and this focus and initiative by Bread for the World and so many other partnering organizations helps to usher in a different kind of wind, a wind that will help write a new chapter, not just for the farmers, but for our local communities. If you want a more just food system, if you want a healthier community, if you want a better world that's not labored by the climate change realities of the day, we must come together, combine our resources, put together our actions and our plans to do better by Black farmers. For far too long, climate change solutions have not included Black farmers. Local food system funding has not centered Black farmers, and even advocacy organizations have kept Black farmers out of the room. It's time for a change. And this statement by Bread for the World and so many others who come together helps us to point at what we need to do now. Name the barriers, confront the obstacles, and find the courage to overcome them through joint action. Let us, yes, produce powerful statements, but let those statements be overshadowed by substantive action so that we can organize what we have to bring about a better society and a better farming reality for Black farmers in this country. The Black Church Food Security Network is committed to standing on the convictions of our faith, that God might give us the strength and the power to stand up to powerful lobbyists and other factors and actors in the food system that keep the resources and opportunities far away from the family farm. It's time to go back to the old landmark where people knew where their food came from because they knew who grew it. Where people recognize that if you don't work with your farmer, you don't care about your food system. We're going back to the old landmark, as we say in church and sing in church, where we can work together to harvest. We can work together to buy from farmers. We can work together, churches, to even plan our financial investments with farmers far enough in advance to give them the support that they need. I'm excited about the transformation that is yet on the way as we commit to speak truth to power, but also act in our power for farmers, for our families, and for our community.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Brown, for your very strong and passionate plea for us to come together to be instruments of God's peace and God's empowerment for all of God's children to have both the resources and the possibilities relative to farming. Thank you so much for what you're doing to link Black churches all over the country to reclaim their heritage, to be places where nourishing food can be grown and where leadership can come as it has been in the past, but to strengthen that for the future. Thank you, Dr. Brown. So without further ado, we would like to bring to you the statement. If you receive the flyer, if you go into the flyer, you can click inside of the flyer and you will see the faith statement that Black farmers in this network have put together that he referred to, and also the congressional leaders referred to, as well as Ms. Abiola. You have it there in the flyer. But having said that, I would like to share my screen so that we can quickly go through what the statement is saying. I trust everyone can see my screen. You will see in this statement the various principles that have been referred to in the comments that have been made. And the first point that's in the statement coming from our network of Black farmers is the issue of discrimination and inequities. I think we've already heard some of this in the presentations that we've heard already, but this was a top concern relative to the Black farmers that are a part of this network that we are part of together. So that would be the first one. The second one has to do with climate change and justice. Climate change, and again, Ms. Bigelow will speak about this in a short time from now, but climate change and justice. And then the other matter that came through the Black Farmers Network was the issue of sustainable farming. Not just farming for a season, but how do we sustain the soil? How do we sustain the environment? How do we sustain positive and good relationships whereby resources can be accessed not only through government, but through the neighbor? So sustainable farming. The next one was access. There's a lack of access of markets and livelihoods that Black farmers have named as a concern relative to the advancement of Black farming. And then financial and other economic resources. We know that investment matters, and that's part of the role of government, but it's also part of the role of communities and also the private sector. So where are the financial and other economic resources? It takes capital to buy equipment. It takes capital to nurture the land. It takes capital to do a lot of things that other larger farming communities have the benefit of. And then there's the matter of succession. Again, we will hear more about the next generations that are to come. There are young people standing up in this moment. Ms. Bigelow is one of those. I think she does B kind of work, but she'll say more about all of that. But succession, we have to plant the seeds for the leadership of the younger generations. And some of that is happening now, but more needs to happen. Then the issue of gender. We will hear shortly from the Reverend Yvette Blair, who works with our organizing department at Bread for the World in the Southwest corner of the United States. And she has a new book, actually, her on women farming, women farmers. Of course, Ms. Abiola also brought that up, and you're going to hear from Ms. Capers in a moment, who is also one of those women farmers who's doing the good work around Black women farmers. And of course, we heard also about what's happening in Kenya and other parts of Africa. And then the issue of bureaucracy. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of challenge of accessing. Our government can be very complicated in terms of the forms and the relationships and making your way through the system. What better ways can we make the bureaucracy more user-friendly, particularly when it comes to Black farmers? And so this is what they also raised in the paper. So this is just kind of an overview of the paper. But again, if you will just click inside of that flyer, you will find the paper, but not to worry. We'll also put the link in the chat again for your benefit. So without further ado, it is my joy to bring to you Miss Cynthia Capers, who has a poultry farm in Sicily. She'll tell you more about that in a moment, about what she is doing relative to poultry. And again, as Miss Abiola said, we met with a wonderful woman in Kenya who is empowering other women farmers to do something very similar. So you see the Pan-African viewpoint is really connected even in this moment of sharing. So Ms. Capers, thank you so much for founding the work that you're doing. Tell us more and bring your perspectives at this time. God bless.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cynthia Capers, and I am a non-generational farmer. I came to farming as I'm an inner city girl from Chicago, and so I am so far removed from what it means to have had access to farming. But I am now a farmer. I'm a poultry farmer. I'm a friend of the feathered ones, and feel very strongly about poultry and what it can bring to people that are starting off in farming. But what I really wanted to talk about today is so much of what we've been working on over the last many months, which is the statement that Angelique referenced. And part of it is something that's happened that I think is not really we're aware of. As we go through with the trends and things for bringing in the urban gardens and the urban farms and all of these things, what we must not do and what we have to continue is that we have to understand that agriculture, which I've learned just stepping through it, that we must still continue to keep on the forefront the farmers that have gone before us, that are continuing to do the work of farming, that are maybe not in the urban areas, but they are then again still not getting what they're due from the acts of farming, the agricultural and the USDA and all of these things from before. And so what happens is that I've learned is that, you know, in America, we tend to have the trends and we trend to certain things and then we forget what happened before. And so hopefully we will continue to understand that there are farmers that are now still farming, that we're not doing urban gardening, but nothing against the urban gardening, but that we have to be collective in when we are helping, because policies we cannot leave out with farming. I want to say also, it's been quite difficult under some of the circumstances of the USDA. The USDA has many programs and many things, but I think that we do have to, and what I've learned, that we need more of them on the boots to the ground, where we can access what we need from them. Because in the world of farming, you find that you're very isolated and you're doing things on your, you know, in your world, and you're kind of not around other people. And that is something that needs to be kept up with and kept to the forefront, that because you're on a farm, you may or may not have this whole big community, because you're kind of driven down to your own community. And we need more community support, and we need more USDA response maybe to the farm, as opposed to sometimes they have us coming out to programs on the outside of the farm. And so that's something that I wanted to speak to, because that's been some of my experiences. Now, I love farming, or else I wouldn't be doing it. I'll tell you, I love it as a passion. I mean, I came to it. I'm an inner city girl and I'm a registered nurse. And so I'm definitely not your common farmer. But there are aspects, having learned from being a farmer and coming to it the way I have, that there's things that I can see that we need to repair. And one thing that is really important is that we should ensure that farmers have access to farming as a job, as a career path, and that you should not have to worry about going broke because you decided to be a farmer. We want these young people, we want these generations to be farmers, but many times they are going to decide that they cannot be a farmer because they cannot make a living. And you have to have the two incomes. You should be able to feed the land, feed the people, and not go broke, and not have to join yourself with huge conglomerate farm systems in order to make a living. That is something that we need to change, and that I have found has been part of my world. So suffice to say, there's lots going on in farming. I love farming, and we want to ensure that you all are very aware of what's going on, and how we can bridge our gaps here in the Black community with the world and our farm and our land. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Capers, and thank you for being a part of the Black Farmers Network and for being a part of the host committee that put together this webinar as well. We're grateful for your work. Now we would like to turn it over to Ms. Karyn Bigelow. I'm sorry, we still claim her as our own at Bread, what can I say? But she's gone off, and now she's the co-executive of the Creation Justice Ministries, and she's going to speak into the matter of climate and that section in the paper around justice and climate change. So Ms. Bigelow, over to you, and thank you too for being a part of the committee and all that you're doing.
Yes, thank you so much. And hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be able to have Creation Justice Ministries co-host this with Bread for the World and the Rural Coalition. So as Angelique mentioned, I am a beekeeper. And so this has been very much a new endeavor over the last few years for me, and something that I'm so excited to be doing, but also very much see the challenge that many experience when it comes to how do you expand your efforts and the challenge of acquisition of land, or just even having access to sites to be able to expand. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the issue of climate change and sustainability, and really this need for climate justice as we see this work happening. Because as you all have heard, there's been so many different things that have happened to Black farmers, from discrimination, lack of access to markets. There's been just such a history, and there's been so many promises that the US government has given to Black farmers, but yet those things have not been fulfilled. And all while dealing with that and trying to keep land and to be able to make profitable businesses, we also find that people are having to deal with the struggle of climate change. And so because of that, it's compounding so many of the issues that we have. What we found was that when talking to some of the Black farmers, one person mentioned living in South Carolina, that she no longer was able to farm during the summer because it was just so hot. So she had to farm her microgreen business or farm in the spring and in the fall, but the summer she had to stop because it was the heat was too scorching to her crops. And so as we look at the issue of climate, we have to be sensitive to the fact that there are those who are already struggling, and this is only going to make things worse if we don't get a hold of everything. And so there's the issues that we've seen where farmers are struggling either due to drought, extreme heat. We're seeing people having to experience deep freezes that happen, for example, as we've seen in states like Texas for the last few years over the winter. And so all of these things have just a compounding effect, as I said before, when it comes to Black farmers. But we also know that when it comes to Black farmers, they're more likely to be sustainable in practice, and not in a way, as many farmers name, that is a bit of a greenwashing of what is happening, but instead actually having sustainable practices that are giving back to the earth just as much, if not more, than what it's been able to give to us. And so being able to do sustainable farming in a way where we're leaving the land better than what we found it is very much a principle that so many Black farmers are doing. And so to us, really part of what we need to talk about in this discussion is how the future of Black farming is really, or Black farming is really where the future needs to be in farming in general when it comes to the sustainable practices that are being done. However, unfortunately, so much of the time, because of USDA policy, often those who are doing the more sustainable practices that are better for the soil, better for the earth, they are being unfortunately put into a disadvantage, and then those who are doing practices that are not great for the earth, that are leaving the land worse than what it was found, they are often the ones who are being incentivized financially to keep those bad practices. And so as we do this, we really do, as Reverend Brown said, need to know who our farmers are and go back to that model in the future. And it will be a far more sustainable model that will also help to build up the financial livelihoods of so many small and medium scale farmers who are doing such great work that are really doing good for the planet. And so in this moment, I just want us to have a call of not just justice for Black farmers, but that includes reparations for Black farmers. That includes climate justice, where we are centering those who are being impacted and really centering those who are really going to be the solution, who are going to have the solutions for the future of our food system. Thank you so much for having me, and so happy to answer any more questions in our question section around climate and how it's having an impact on Black farmers.
And thank you, Ms. Bigelow, for what you are doing and for working with the Creation Justice Ministries, which is a number of faith groups that have come together to speak into this urgency. It's really an urgency around the issue of climate. I will just say a couple words, and we will send this to you also, as Ms. Abiola and I both said. We have I've just returned from Addis Ababa on yesterday, because I flew with Ethiopian Airlines to Nairobi and stopped there with partners. We had a convening on climate justice and faith in Nairobi, Kenya. Again, this is that Pan-African global space that we speak of with Black farming. And we are so pleased that we had over 75 faith leaders from Europe, from Africa, and from the United States who were convened for a convocation just on last week. We visited smallholders, as Ms. Abiola has explained to you, with the work that they're doing. But then we ended the time together with a faith statement that was adopted. And in this season, within the last couple of days, the news releases have gone out, and we believe the voice is being heard in preparation for COP27. COP27 starts next week. I mean, it's like right around the corner, and it will be in Africa. For those who may not know, it will be in Egypt, and certainly African faith leaders are mobilized. U.S. leaders are mobilized. The world is mobilized for the Party of Nations to come together to deal with this annual forum around issues around climate. If you allow me just for a very quick moment, I will just scan for you the statement that came out of our convocation. It's called A Faithful Voice on Hunger and Climate Justice. And in here, there is a sense, because these were faith leaders coming together with policy and leaders and smallholder farmers, but there's a section here on lament. There's a section here on confession, what it is that we have not done to be as faithful to the issues relative to climate justice. There's a prayer of repentance. There's a prayer of commitment, and how it is we value impact. And here you will find the advocacy agenda that, of course, Brad and our partners are committed to. We're happy to send this to you for further review, as well as, of course, a statement by the Black farmers that can resource the work that you may be doing. But without further ado, we do have one other speaker, and then we're going to keep the rest of the time for your comments, your questions. We hope you've been writing in the chat. We have people who've been monitoring the chat, and we'll go there, and also to any verbal interventions you might want to make for the last portion of our time together. But without further ado, we want to bring to you the perspective of the Reverend Yvette Blair, who comes to us from Texas. She's a woman farmer also, and also a faith leader of the clergy. So we bring to you Reverend Blair.
Hello. I bring you greetings from Dallas, Texas. I am Reverend Dr. Yvette Blair. And for those who know me, they know that the Y is not silent, because I use my voice to advocate for those who are disenfranchised, made marginalized, and who experience inequities, particularly in our foodways systems. As we approach midterm elections and talk about the truths in this season, the truth is that there is a double inequity when it comes to farming. Black women are disproportionately affected. Now, this is not a new truth, but it is one that needs to be highlighted and amplified. Over the course of the last year, as I and my colleagues have been in dialogue with Black farmers, it is clear that we are on the edge of seeing the erasure of Black women farmers in the national narrative around the injustices that Black farmers are experiencing. I am reminded that in the biblical text, there were 5 daughters who were on the verge of being erased, on the verge of not inheriting their father's land simply because of being women, and they amplified their voices. I'm talking about Zelophehad's daughters, these agrarian women whose story is told in Numbers 27 because they advocated for their livelihood. And because they did, these women were not erased. We saw perhaps one of the earliest pictures of farming intersecting with race and gender inequities. Now, as we turn the corner here, when we look at the historiography of agriculture in the United States, for every Fannie Lou Hamer who uses skill of innovation and imagination to feed her community through labor-intensive agricultural work while dealing with the politics of food and land negotiation, today there is an Amira Mitchell who is in Philadelphia cultivating Sister Seeds, a Black woman-owned production farm focused on African American, and Afro-Caribbean heirloom vegetable seeds. There is an Ivy Walls. She is an agriculturalist who is doing this for the community, in the historically Black community of Sunnyside in Houston, Texas. She is the visionary behind Ivy Leaf Farms responding to food insecurity. Can I just tell you that Black women are ground mothers? The farmer sees the field shepherds, the ecologists invested in sustainable farming that produces food sovereignty, food equity, and food justice. Black women farmers are also socially disadvantaged. They have limited resources, and they are trying to scale the barriers that block access to funding and grants that are available to white farmers. Now, to be sure, the United States Department of Agriculture defines socially disadvantaged as those persons who belong to groups that have been subject to racial or ethnic prejudice. And again, this is not new. The truth is that farming is directly related to land ownership, and we know that it is always about land. Land is directly related to amassing wealth. And so it is not lost on me, and hopefully not on you either, that the real picture of real estate is that Black women farmers struggle at accelerated levels, and they labor at accelerated levels. Gender disparity is real. And if we are going to advocate on behalf of Black farmers, which I hope you will join us in doing so, then it is incumbent upon us to know that Black women farmers are doing work that is crucial and critical to bridging the gap in our foodways systems. So let us work together to ensure that they nor their industrious efforts are erased. Black women farmers are entitled to and deserve equity in funding, access to resources, incentives, and the financial stability that ensures a sustainable livelihood for the sustainable agriculture that Black women farmers are producing for and in our communities. Thank you.
Well, we certainly appreciate Reverend Blair's presentation, really affirming the Imago Dei of Black women. That is, all of us made in the image of God, and all of what all of us have to contribute for sustainable life for all of us, So thank you, Reverend Blair, for what you were doing. And much of what she presented also is in her new book, her new publication, which we're glad to share with you also, about what she has stated with you on today. She's a part of our host committee and of course the Black Farmers Network, from which we are representing on this day. So thank you again, Reverend Blair. And of course, to Ms. Bigelow, and to all of our presenters. Thank you so much. I know, I've been in this work, but I continue to benefit from these presentations today. And I hope you too are joining me in that kind of celebration. So without further ado, we have about 20 minutes. Yes, we have at least 20 minutes for any further discussion from those who've been a part of the webinar thus far. I'm going to ask our colleague, Ms. Rosa Salvadera, who's also been working with us on the host committee, to bring to us any questions or any observations out of the chat that may have come that we can bring to our panelists to respond to. Ms. Salvadera, could you help us, please?
Sure. I am able to see one question in the question and answer section, which is how can we ensure that Black farmers have access and control of the finances that are supposedly set aside for Black farmers and communities? That is an excellent question. That is from Mr. John Jamerson. Does anybody want to address this from the panelists?
Thank you so much, Rosa. Are there any other panelists who would like to respond to the question?
I guess I will take this question. This is Cynthia. It's a very difficult question. We have access and control of the finances that are supposedly set aside. What we have to do, we have to stay pretty much steadfast on some of the fundings and the programs that are there it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for what's under the USDA and some of the programs that are under that, then you'll have to stay steadfast to your farm service agency, your county agencies, and don't be shy if you are finding that you have some discrimination that's going on in some of those areas. Unfortunately, as a new farmer, I have encountered that even in my own county level. And so that is unfortunately continuing. But there is money set aside for the farmer, the new farmer, the farmer of color, the veteran farmers. You just will have to go and do your best to access and stay on to them about it. You may even have to find yourself going maybe to your politician in your community that might in fact help you to do to that. Also, I've learned as a new farmer that there are programs underneath your extension, but under your state extension agency. Some of those have, they're all free classes and that you can get, but you also have financial people that can actually come to your farm, which is, you don't have to pay for it, that they are paid to come to your farm and do financial planning and financial workup. And you may have to go ahead and put yourself in those positions where you access that and have them come to the farm and work with you side by side.
Ms. Capers, thank you so much. I would like to also welcome into this space Mr. Todd Post, who is our senior domestic policy analyst at Bread for the World. And he too, he's been a part of our committee that's helping us with this moment. I don't know, Todd, if you would like to respond to this question quickly as well, then we'll go to the next question that may be before us. Todd?
Yeah, I think Cynthia did a great job. I mean, I think the only thing I can echo to that is we have to hold the officials accountable. If they are obliged or they have a responsibility to work with farmers, then we have to make sure that they do. It might also be worth noting that within the areas that the area of the country where you work, there are perhaps cooperatives and other organizations who could lend a hand if it seems intimidating. There are groups who are helping, and they're at the national level. Groups like Rosa's group in particular is extremely good, and There's others around the country, the National Association of Black Farmers, Federation of Southern Cooperatives. There's organizations out there that I think can help individual farmers so that they don't feel so isolated and all by themselves.
Todd, thank you so much. I want to go back to Rosa, who I think also has an additional comment. And of course, her organization is a co-sponsor of this event as well. So Rosa, did you want to respond and then take us to the next question that may be before us?
Okay, I did want to add something to this because this is a question that is widespread. And I want to also bring up that a lot of work has, I mean, we always stand on the shoulders of somebody, right? And I worked on the Pigford 2 case and the Hispanic and women's discrimination claims against the USDA. And it was those folks who presented their bodies in DC on tractors, right, to call attention to the fact that the control, how can you control the finances is, it depends. And if the finances that exist are controlling you, and in this case, the USDA does exert some form of control because you have to spend a lot of effort to get those resources. And people have spent much time, Black farmers have paved the way. I'm a member of a Latina women's farming, actually we're a seed production collective, but you know, we are walking in the path that Black farmers have cleared, right? And so it's important to always remember, I think, that market access is one of the ways that our finances are controlled. It's not just about getting the money from the, I mean, if you have an open market for Black farmers to market their goods, then there is less need for the assistance, right, or the support of the USDA. Not to, I mean, the assistance and the support should be there and needs to be there, but you can't offset it with, you know, controlling the market and not opening up the market for Black farmers. So a Black market is really important, you know, and for all people to support Black market spaces, that's a funding source that farmers can, that's the way to keep in control of those finances. And I see Chief Andre has his hand up, so I'm going to yield to him or them.
Welcome, Chief Andre.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
We hear you just fine, Chief. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, we're the Family Farmers Cooperative here in Mississippi, and we don't want to be no small farmers. I keep going to all those meetings and everything, all of them set up for the small farmers this, the small farmers that. We need some big land and some big contracts so we can be some big farmers. That's the only way I'm going to be able to inspire some young people to want to farm. And stop calling us some Africans and African Americans. I give you $100 that anybody can prove they come from Africa over here. We some indigenous people to this land. All this land was stolen. And the people that were freed in 1866 were people that had been enslaved. And that's the first thing we need to look at. Congressional hearings that talked about this year, recently in July, it talks about the Treaty of 1866. And that ought to give us 160 acres of land to start with. So we need some more land. Of course, we want to feed the people. We want to feed the world. We want to feed the families and everything. Stop calling us some African American. That stuff started in 1988 with Jesse Jackson. We're indigenous to this land. And so we want to talk about targeting 100 to 500 farmers of color and connect the universities and give us the research, the resources and the research and the technical assistance that we need so that we can get started. We're ready to go. We need to be ready March the 1st. So I would like to go back to the USDA, to the Senate and the Congress, and identify the status and standing on the land, who we are, and what we're entitled to under that Treaty of 1866, which says that we're entitled to 160 acres of land, and we're entitled to land in Oklahoma also. But we are from the Southeastern Territory, and so let's stop talking and communicating and talk to the tractor companies. If they want to support the farmers, then let's make a deal so we can have some equipment. And let's lease some land. Let somebody put up some money so we can lease 2,000, 10,000 acres of land, 2 million acres of land, so we can grow. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you.
Chief Andre, I just want to thank you for reminding us of the history, which is obviously very painful and very difficult when we think about the 250 years of enslavement, and then, of course, the Jim Crow period for the following 100 years. And that there were policies that were set up that were to empower and to support Black farmers. And unfortunately, those are many opportunities missed. So thank you for reminding us that there is that history. I think the Black Farmers Network has named that in their statement. I also hear Reverend Dr. Heber Brown say this is a new moment for us to try to figure that out, name the past, but also figure out a way that we can move forward together. And certainly the point around open markets, markets that are not racially biased, open markets that are not gender biased, but really remembering that all are created in the image of God. And therefore, this is God's earth, this is God's world. And all of us are called to steward the land so that all of us can be fed and all of us can be nourished. So thank you for that very important reminder. I would like to think that in this moment, with this webinar, this is a renewed moment for us to figure out a way together. And particularly as we think about the reauthorization of the Farm Bill and also the Global Food Security Act specifically. I just want to acknowledge that we only have 9 minutes left together, as this has been very substantive and a very important time together. And I wonder if there are any other questions or any other quick interventions you might like to make at this time. Rosa, do you see anything more in the chat, or are there others who would like to raise their hand and be heard from for just a brief moment? Thank you so much.
Well, there is a question again from Mr. Jamerson. Is there a question? Is there anyone who is going for the 40 million USDA land accessible grant for BIPOC farmers to gain land? Actually, yes, I am. As the collective Latina women's farmers and member of the Rural Coalition, we are going to try to access the access to capital grant that's out. It's due on the 18th. I can try to put the link in there. It's due on the 18th of November. I'll find the link and put it in there, or maybe we can send it with the follow-up stuff. This is an opportunity that would be great for folks to look at. I've been in the meetings with the FSA on what is allowable and what is not. And really, it seems like the opportunity to purchase land is something that's going to be there. Again, there's some criteria that you have to meet. It has to be, it's not directly, like it's not farmers that can apply, but for example, a cooperative, an organization. So if you are not in that eligibility criteria, it would be important to find those organizations that and groups that are accessing it, and especially who is going to be. There's 3 different tiers. One is national, one is regional, and one is local. And it would be very good for folks to try to get at least connected with that effort. And I'll be quiet and put that link in there. I'll find it.
Rosa, thank you so much. Again, this webinar is meant to be informative, accessible. And just so you know, because there have been questions I know in the chat, this recording will be made available to all of you And we will be forwarding attachments of the resources that we've identified during our time together. So you will have that by virtue of email that will come to you. And yes, we again have recorded this session. And so that will be made available to you also to share with others. Now we are down, unfortunately, to about 8 minutes time. And I'm wondering if there are any more questions or observations. Rosa, is there anything else in the chat that we need to know about?
Sorry about that. I was looking for the link. But you answered somebody, Mr. Elmore had the question about, is the program recorded and can we find it? And also, this is a good question, to share it with others. Would it be okay for this recording to be shared with folks in the participants networks?
Oh, we absolutely hope you will share widely. Whatever can be beneficial to you in your work, we want to be of service.
Okay. So from Chief Ray Stelly, Chef Ray Stelly, I'm sorry. Sometimes land acquisition isn't as easy as it sounds, but can be acquired through agrarian land trusts, partnerships, and group purchases. Outside of that, the UN's goal is to eliminate food insecurity by 2050. How can we do more? How can we do that more quickly? By targeting communities and homes with a need through garden installations. How can we increase our chances of financing through knowledge on business credit, SAM.gov, etc.?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Rosa. I'm wondering if any of the panelists want to respond, and then I'm also going to ask Todd to respond as well. First, though, any of the panelists would like to respond. Okay, looks like everyone's deferring to Todd. So Todd, would you like to give a response to the question? Then we'll come back to Rosa.
I'm afraid I don't really have a response to that. Angelique, drilling into detail, I don't really have much knowledge about.
Rosa, did you have any other response you might want to make?
I just think that in that question, there were some answers. And so reaching out collectively, and if there isn't one, I'm looking at Cynthia Capers. I know that you're organizing something in your local area. Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and start building from the local and then connecting. And I think that part of our objective with this gathering is to be able to serve as a connecting place for folks, for Black farmers. So I would say that that in that question there was a lot of answers as well.
Yes, I was going to say yes. There's that's a tough one too, and I totally respect Chef Raynell. We've working together on a few things, so I get. I think what happens is there's so many avenues to get to the spot that sometimes we just don't know which one to take. And I know I found that as a new, and I'm still considered a new farmer, that there's all these different ways to find this goal, but what we need is the direction, and we need openness to get to those goals, and not be blocked. You have to do a lot of pivoting if you're in agriculture, and you have to just, it's almost like being on the land and what the land provides. And we know that we have to make changes to accommodate nature and the land. You have to do that as well if you're a farmer and you're trying to access any of these programs, funding agencies. You just have to be able to have that within yourself. I don't want to say that if you don't have it, that you're not going to make it, but you really do have to have the ability to pivot and be resilient.
Thank you, Ms. Capers. Unfortunately, oh yes, I was going to go to you, Ms. Bigelow, to see if you had a wrap-up comment. You read my mind.
Yeah.
So what I go over to you for a wrap-up comment, and then we're going to bring this to a close because we're down to 3 minutes. So Ms. Bigelow.
So I know so many people have made, or not people, but entities, organizations across the world have made a goal to want to see an end to hunger by 2030. And I think one of the things that we know is that the planet our population is growing so much, especially by 2050. And so one of the things I think that is so important is that in order to achieve food security, we have to do it with a sustainable lens, because it will be very easy that, let's say we are able to actually end hunger by 2030 or sometime after that. Will it be sustainable? Will we be able to have the resources, the natural resources, the soil health, all those things necessary for, those who are, Gen Z, or those who are much younger? Like, will they be able to have an earth that is habitable, and will we be able to keep up with that population that will keep growing? And so I think part of it is that in order to really achieve food security, it has to be done in a way that is considering not just who is currently on this planet, but also the many billions of people that will be here in the future. And how do we take that into effect so that we're not just ending hunger, but we're ending it for the future as well, so that there will be a generation who will not know what hunger is like. But that's my wrap-up thought.
Well, thank you, Ms. Bigelow, for that wrap-up comment. Friends, we're at the last 2 minutes of our time together. So in this moment, I certainly want to thank all of our co-sponsors of this webinar. That would be, of course, Bread for the World, United States, in the global space, there's a Bread for the World in Germany. So I know there's some global friends here with us. This is for US. And then, of course, Creation Justice Ministries, the Rural Coalition, and then the many Black farmers and their organizations. We could name all of them as well, who have brought us to this moment. We thank you so much for tuning in. Please, again, note the recording will be made available. The attachments relative to the resources and the statements will be made available to you. And the links that are in the chat will also be made available to you as well in a follow-up email, as well, again, as the recording. So thank you so much. We started on time and we're going to end on time. So thanks everyone for joining us. We're looking forward to the way forward as we accompany or are participants as Black farmers together for the future of all of the creation. God bless you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.